question, and yeah, there is a Jay Narayan has raised a hand. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks to Devi. So, hello, Professor Kumar. Thanks for sharing
Yeah.
your wonderful words and journey. So, just one question. I'm from, by the way, I'm from Department of Electrical Engineering, a faculty member here. So,
Mhm.
I have read many interviews of these accomplished writers, and there are two views actually on creative writing. So, one is
Mhm.
you should read more and write less, and another is you should read less and write more, so that you don't have impact of others on your own writing. You develop your own style. So what is your view on this? Basically, I was just curious to know.
I think it's absolutely, it depends on the individual. However, some writers, like I used to read a lot, but now I am not reading as much as I'm writing. Now, why? Because you see, I mean, there is an anxiety of influence, definitely. If it's a very powerful piece of writing, then you do feel, oh my God, how do I shake it out of my mind? Shake myself out of it so that I can write what I want to write, right? And that should not be under anybody's kind of shadow. I don't want to. In fact, I must share this with you. My own father was a very well-known writer in Urdu, and he was a very formidable personality. And used to, when I was a child, he used to keep saying, he used to keep reading stories out. What he would write, he would read them out to the family, not to the family, but more to his wife, my mother, and we were overhearing all that all the time. So I was really filled up with that anxiety of influence. I didn't want to be influenced by him. I just didn't want to. And even when he saw my felicity at, how I was writing, and he could see that I was going to be a writer or an artist or whatever. So he started trying to really influence me by saying, write short stories. Short stories is the best form of writing. And do you know, I shunned writing short stories. All my life, I have not written a short story. I wrote poetry, I think, in reaction to my father. So you don't know what happens. Your psychology, as a child, when you're told again and again, I didn't want to, I was revolting. So what I'm trying to say is that it's each one's own personal kind of context from which you decide, or you don't even take a formal decision. It's just your inclination. But yes, it is always, we tell our students also, and to some extent I think it's very important to at least have some contact with great writing. But then again, what is great writing? You have to wade yourself, you have to discover it for yourself. So if you are given a plethora of good work, what is perceived in the market, or what has stayed on as classics or whatever, you read, and then you make up your own mind as to which way you want to go, which to you is more appealing, what are the different styles. Yeah, what is important is to read a variety so that you don't get stuck to one kind of writing. So you expose yourself to a variety, and then also, if you are a writer, you will put them down and you will write. So I don't think it is either or. I don't think it's either or at all. It's well known that sometimes somebody, I know, for instance, in Hindi, she had never thought of reading and writing, but age 45, 50, she started to write, and she had not written very much, not at all, but she had not even read very much. And yet she was a very good writer. So there's no saying. Maybe she was brought up on her grandmother's tales. You don't know from where you pick up that art of telling a story, right? And then you just start writing. But the point I'm making is that there is no formula of any kind. Personally, as far as I'm concerned, even professionally, I've had to read, and I was reading, and I am the daughter of a writer, and my mother was a teacher of a professor of English literature. So somehow the context was that of books and reading, but I was very conscious that I want to protect myself from influences, because I'll be swallowed by that. I wanted to discover my own mode of writing, my own way of doing things. And I have been doing that. And sometimes I say, oh my God, I messed it up. I'm an editor also, translator also, and, all of this, writer also. And maybe I should have just focused on one. But many times I say, no, I'm happy to be this, because this is artificially said that there are boundaries, too many strict boundaries. They're married into each other very beautifully. But yes, you need to find time to do all that, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. So just one more question, because this session is on editing. So like I start with actually scientific writing. So like here we have in like I also am an editor of academic journals. So basically there we have sometimes binary decisions whether we like it or no, not right. So this question is about the liberty of an editor for when when you are judging some creative writing. So just give an example. So my question is whether there should be binary decision or not. So just one example. So one of my work actually that was sent to one literary magazine in Rajasthani, and that's by the Academy, Sahitya Academy, and that was published. And they had edited some words which were actually of local dialect. So when the actually it was published, I saw that this was like had a completely different flavor, and they edited it because the wider audience could understand those words than the local
Hmm.
dialects. But when I
Yeah,
saw, like, one thing is the impact was diluted, and
yeah.
this kind of liberty should the editor take, or they should have just the binary decision. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this
Because
is a
this
very
is
debatable. Yeah, this is a very debatable point, because as an editor myself of Indian literature, when I am getting, for instance, very recently, two, three issues we've had. One was from what language? Bodo language. One was from, and yet another language. I'm trying to remember what that was, but lesser known language it was, and Ho language, right? So, and I was telling myself, no, if I have too much of that, then how are people going to make sense of it? So what I decided was that, okay, we'll have one or two quotations that this writer has given in the original with English translation side by side, so that some sense is made. But all the others would have to be in English, because there wasn't that kind of space that we could give to one article. So there are all kinds of constraints. So you have to, as an editor, take a decision as to how do you want to put it. So I called up the writer of that article and discussed it. And I said, look, I would have to do it if I want to accommodate your article. And I want to do it because I want people to know that there is this language and there is this kind of material in this thing. And the atmosphere, as you rightly said, the flavor needs to be retained. So as an editor, I decided to play it out as, with the spirit of moderation, as I say. Have a little bit, introduce it to the reader, and let the reader go further into research and find out more about it. So sometimes you have to take that decision due to the constraint of space, also readability. But I'm also, on the other hand, a propagator of another idea, that in India, when there are so many languages, and translation is a mandatory, should be mandatory activity for, even in schools, etc. It should be taught everywhere, so that we don't follow the pattern of the monolingual societies that, had dominated over us for so long. But the point I'm making is that I personally feel that we have to develop a readership which is attuned to translations. Then there would be greater acceptability. So we have to do it slowly. Otherwise, people start reading, and if they feel that it's not reaching, then they just chuck it out. Don't read it. You know, they don't even read that article. Only very specialized people who would have special interest in some language literature, they might look it up. Otherwise, they don't. So if you want to create a language for translation, an acceptability of the language of translation, which is now people are beginning to talk about it now. See, Russian literature we all accepted in translation long ago, and so many of the words came from there, right? Many, samovar, for instance, we picked it up from there. Many words like that. So, and English language has accepted words slowly from others, but it should not be at the cost of culture that needs to be projected. So the cultural contact can has to be established somewhere. And how do you do it in measured ways, so that it's not cutting into the readability and not disturbing the readability too much. So in as far as the other side is concerned, yes, people should be open to accepting newer words, and they should be open to doing some little bit of research on their own. But do we have that kind of readership? It's very difficult. It's very difficult to get that. It's just a question of playing it out, slowly.
Thank you very much, Professor Kumar. And